Brooke van Velden, new minister, Brooke van Velden, is talking about repealing the fair pay agreements. Now, I've done a few things tonight, right? I say this a lot, the fair pay agreement, and I just thought, I wonder if everybody knows what that is. So we're going to have a look after this at a bit of a summary of what the fair pay agreement means. And this is the party that wants to get rid of it. And I'll keep my conclusions that I've written down till the end, but this is asking Brooke on breakfast about, what they're getting up to ASAP. And the number one thing out of her mouth, her highest priority, remember, is to get rid of fair pay agreements.
Personally, within my portfolios, I'll be looking to repeal the fair pay agreements by Christmas to give business owners certainty as employers going into the new year. But also we've had news of the COVID inquiry being part of both coalition agreements with ACT and New Zealand First. And I'll be looking to extending the terms of reference for the COVID inquiry as per our agreements. But I think what we can see is a government that wants to cut down on the cost of living for New Zealanders, crack down on crime, and make sure that we reduce co-governance. Those are the issues that majority of New Zealanders have voted for a change of government, and what we're seeing in the coalition agreements. So now we've got to deliver it.
Now, look, these guys won. They won the competition, but the majority of New Zealanders did not vote for this. You can't say that. You could say the majority of voters voted for it, but to be honest with you, the majority of New Zealanders the majority of people who voted for a change, but you can't say they all wanted these things, because some of the policies she's talking about are ACT policies and National wanted nothing to do with them. However, I want to talk a bit about the fair pay agreements, but the first thing I want to ask Chewie is, I don't want to seem like I'm just shitting on the mainstream media, because I understand how that works. I've been in that world. But why didn't they say reducing co-governance? Like what? What is there at the moment? There was this whole groundswell, hubbub, bullshit, racist ideology around co-governance to do with Three Waters, which isn't happening. So other than saying that word, I remember an episode of The Simpsons. Was it The Simpsons? And Marge was running for office. And she was trying to put out her positions and balance positions. And she just realized as soon as she said 9/11, all of the audience went, woo, woo, like this. It feels like that's what Brooke's doing. She says co-governance because it's a buzzword that means anti-woke, pro-us. Because what co-governance is being cancelled? Like, what is there out there that people are actually worried about and they want cancelled? Because you can't say Three Waters, because that's not happening. That wasn't happening under the new Labour idea either. But I think it's New Zealand. It's Brooke's 9/11 says the words, and the whole crowd goes woo, 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 yeah. And I don't get it. I mean, like, honest question, Chewie, can you think of anything where co-governance in society today, enacted today, they would want? I'm not even saying they should get rid of, but they would want to get rid of.
There's nothing there, but it is a catch. Like, people will lump it together as that they are talking about Māori greetings and emails and street signs, and that's all co-governance now. That's all in the same fucking bucket of the Maoris are getting too much. It's all mixed up in the same bucket. And
I got it.
And Brooke, with her lovely hairdo and her lovely pink blouse, the friendly face of racism.
Nope,
said co-governance on the TV, and that's what I like. I like it. It's activated that little racist neuron in my brain that says, yeah, I like that.
Okay, so this is what it is, right? This is my opinion. This will be the first time this has been said in New Zealand. Mark the date, mark the time, and remember when it comes back. Co-governance is the New Zealand's right-wing party's version of America's right-wing's critical race theory. That's what it is. Because they all say, we don't want critical race theory in our primary school, or in whatever they're called, elementary school, and it's not. But that's their code word for issues around slavery being taught and that kind of stuff. So
Treaty of Waitangi.
Co-governance. Co-governance.
Yep.
So co-governance, what they're saying when they say co-governance is what a revolting Republican says when they say critical race theory. So that's what it is. All right? That's what it is. You heard it here first. Share it around. Them saying
I-
co-governance is same as Ted Cruz saying critical race theory. So it means nothing, but it basically gets the crowd to whoop and hoot and holler, and makes their back of their necks a bit redder.
Look, I'll tell you something I saw just before I jumped on, right? I was checking Blue Sky and making sure that I shared the links and that sort of thing. And I very briefly, this is anecdotal, haven't verified it, but I saw something that somebody was saying their niece was at school, was told off by a teacher today for talking Māori.
Oh.
Now, if that's fucking true, this is what happens when these guys get in. It gives oxygen to the worst fucking people. And I just like just the fact of a teacher telling a kid to not talk Māori in school. Are we not better than that? Like, I want to find out where the school is. I want to find out that. I hope the story is bullshit.
Yeah. Can I look?
Really
Let me offer something. Yeah, you know me. I'm like, show it to me. Show me the evidence, because there's another story going around the internet at the moment about a barrister called Lucy, who went along to the Palestinian protest, and she wanted to say something about something, not Holocaust, but genocides. Don't ignore other genocides or something like that. And she silently held it up on a flag, like on a piece of paper, and she silently did it, and she silently protested. And the police came along and told her that they needed to take her sign off her, and then end up arresting her. Now, she's got video of about a third of the way through the interaction. So we don't know what happened in the first third. But of course, Free Speech Union has already jumped onto it. Plunkett's already jumped onto it. All these people have already jumped onto it saying, disgusting free speech, what's going on? We don't know. If it is as they're describing, and she literally did nothing, I'm on her side. I agree. No. But we don't know yet. And what I would say to you, Chewy, is the story you're telling me doesn't sound plausible. If it's true, I'm on your side, but I want to see the evidence first before I make a full-on public comment. Just the same as the Lucy, the barrister. You can see some footage. She's got some footage, and they're all selling it like, look, it's on camera. Well, about 2/3 of it's on camera. What if the first third of it, she was doing something that was publicly disordering? We don't know. Until I see all the evidence, until I see the police report, I won't. So from this seat, I always like to have all the evidence. And it's not to negate or inflate anything. It's to be as accurate as we can. This might be a different thing for the media in New Zealand, but what we try and do is be fair and accurate before we jump on something. I'll talk about that story to do with Lucy, the barrister, but I'll be very clear with you, and I'll go, I am not convinced of the story, not because it's not true yet, but because there is a chunk of it missing, which actually ends up being the first third of her interaction with the police. Until I see that or know about that or read the police report, I will wait and see. That's where I sit, Chewy. And I would say the same about your teacher. That's why.
I hope it's not true, but yeah. I've reached out to this person and said, can you please give me some more information about this? I want to look into it, because that's the thing is, like we were talking about with the government department saying, right, cool, we're not having Māori and greetings anymore and that sort of thing. It's not a government directive at this stage. It's just someone setting the tone, and this sort of thing just gives oxygen to some of the worst people to do the worst things.
Now, we've diverted a little bit there, but we talked about the fair pay agreements. And I thought it would be really important for us to know what the fair pay agreements. Remember, this is her number one thing to get onto, right? To get rid of fair pay agreements. So what are they? So this is from makeworkfair.nz. Fair pay agreements in a nutshell. Fair pay agreements are a way of deciding what's fair, what's a fair way to treat working people in a particular industry. They cover things like pay, hours, leave, health, and safety. Fair pay agreements are a new part of New Zealand employment law. They set minimum standards of employment for everyone in a particular industry. So if you don't have them, then you can lower the minimum standard, right? And you know what Act's going to say? Well, market will decide. If they set it too low, they'll go and get a job somewhere else. They don't understand working class. That means, for example, that nobody in that industry can be paid less than the rate agreed to. It's like the minimum wage, but for a specific industry. This will be negotiated by unions and employers in that industry. Fair pay agreements are also about lifting pay and conditions in industries that are low paying. Now, the parties of business, the parties of finance, and ACT in particular, their number one priority for Brooke van Velden is to get rid of that. So we reread part of that back. They want to get rid of setting minimum standards of employment for everyone in a particular industry. They want to get rid of things like agreed pay, agreed hours, leave, health, and safety. That's what they want to get rid of. And it's in another story. They're talking about the crisis around the cost of living. So they want to take these things away from the workers, right? Which means a workplace could pay you less, make you work more, not give you leave, not give you the same health and safety. They can take that away from you or renegotiate that with you. And ACT and National are trying to say we're going to fix the cost of living crisis. But all these people in this crisis might end up getting paid less. So what they're actually doing is they're fixing the cost of living crisis for the bosses and for the business owners and for management roles, because they're the ones that will be able to continue earn and work more, and the ones at the bottom will no longer have the protection of a fair pay agreement, shall we?
Luxon said in his victory speech that he was going to lead a government for all New Zealanders. It certainly doesn't sound like that. I didn't hear that from Brooke. I heard that it was for the benefit of business owners. And correct me if I'm wrong, there are more workers than there are business owners.
I believe so, yes.
If you are not a business owner and are in fact a worker and you voted for these clowns, you have fucked it for everyone. And I think there is I've mentioned this in the past week. I think there is one cure for this. And if you have toyed with the idea of joining a union, or maybe it's not needed because, you know, we've got good wage protection here and we've got good worker protection here, this is them eroding it. So if you ever toyed with the idea of joining a union, I would urge you, open up a second window, look it up on your phone, find what union covers your industry and join it. Because that is going to fucking pay off in the coming years.
I like it how you say I like it how you say open up a second window. So what Chew is saying is don't turn us off. Open a second window. Don't turn us off.
Not crazy.
We can't turn us off because we're royalty coming up now. You know how we roll. Okay, so they get to Chloe, and obviously, not obviously because of her, but because of the government she's looking at, paints a pretty bleak picture.
I got to say, yeah, it's definitely not the government of low-wage workers, renters, or anybody who sits on the margins of our society. The priorities of the incoming government should be dealing with the dual crises of inequality and the climate crisis. But instead, what we have with those two agreements is a grab bag of 200+ odd random policies that come across more as hot takes from your uncle at Christmas. You know, we have increasing access to guns, we have pouring fuel on the fire of the climate crisis, and going to war over safe sex and sexuality education. I cannot think of
culture wars. Think about that. Think about those things you just listed, how unimportant they are to the average New Zealander and their cost of living. But that's what they're pushing. Culture wars, culture wars, culture wars.
Anything that would be less prioritised in this space, something that New Zealanders would want to see their government focusing on less than these kinds of issues. It makes next to no sense to me. It's not a vision for the future that New Zealanders deserve.
Okay, at the end of the day, though, enough people voted for this coalition to form a government, and a majority number of them, by the time you get the three parties together, that's what New Zealand has decided will represent them.
And I got to say, on that point, I think that the majority of New Zealanders who voted in this direction, and I got to say, I did speak to a number of them out on the doors on the campaign trail, voted for dealing with the major issues of our time, the likes of that cost of living crisis. But again, if you thought that the Labour-led government was doing too much, you have got a grab bag of 200+ odd random policies shoved into these agreements. And again, I just can't see how we're going to get anywhere near the issues that really matter.
Okay.
Booyah. Now we have our mic drop moment of the night, always with Chloe Swarbrick. So there you go. Culture wars, culture wars, culture wars, 200+ policies. And I think we'll just keep trucking into the next clip, because the next clip is basically Brooke van Velden talking about climate issues. Yeah, I know. It's like a soccer coach talking about rugby. But also talking about how 200+ policies is actually a really good thing. Really good thing. It is.
Look, I think we have to be really clear here. The oil and gas exploration ban that Labour and the Greens put through in the previous term of government had no regulatory impact analysis or assessment. It was done as a speech from the podium with no insight as to the costs or benefits. And when the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment looked at this ban after the fact, he said it's likely to increase global emissions because we still need electricity as a source.
You've repeated that
true,
lie
Chloe.
time and again on
Look
this couch,
at
Brooke.
the
That's
document.
Yeah,
So,
I encourage people to
you
go
can
and look
have
at the
Chloe
Parliamentary Commissioner
say,
for the Environment's report on this. It said exactly the opposite. It said that there can be claims made on both sides, but that what you were saying is untrue.
it is not untrue, Chloe. But look, what you've said here is, we've got a document of around 200 policies. I think that's a really good thing.
Well, also, squirrel, better move away from the climate conversation. Better get past that super quick because
Should get lashed.
Yeah.
One frustration that I heard time and time again from New Zealanders was a frustration that there were laws being passed by the last government that nobody had any insight or consultation on.
What, you mean like, I don't know, continuing on with smoking? Like how that was talked about heavily before the election? No, you mean like that? Like that one? Maybe like that one?
What we have here is a government that's very clear about what our agenda will be and what we hope to achieve over the next 3 years. We can make people's lives better. We can help with a budget that will reduce the cost of living, and we can also reduce all of that division in our society that's been really anxiety producing for a lot of Kiwis by making sure that we get down and crack on with those 200 items.
No, but the other thing is, okay, so she thinks that they're going to get rid of division. And again, she mentioned cost of living there. Cost of living, while they're giving a tool back to businesses to pay people less and to give them worse conditions. So cost of living, there's a couple of ways that we get on top of it. We all earn more, right? Or prices come down. Now, nothing they've put in of these 200 policies are aiming at how to get prices down, but some of the things they put in for those 200 policies are aiming to get wages down. So won't that exasperate the cost of living crisis?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. If you want to have the biggest effect on people's cost of living, you are looking at rent, you are looking at interest rates and bank profits, and you are looking at the supermarkets. Have I missed something, Pat? Have they put out any policy that would tackle any of those things?
Oh, no, because no, be fair, they have, because they're going to give more money to landlords, and landlords are going to pass that on to their tenants, and it's going to be downward pressure on rental prices. Although remember, Mr. Luxon wouldn't commit to when his rental property prices were going to go down. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how that works.
No, okay, yeah. So we're talking about a fucking magic money funnel that has never happened in the history of renting, of property owners. No, never, ever. So they are not tackling the cost of living. They are saying all of these wonderful things. There are tax cuts for low and middle income New Zealand. Bullshit.
Yeah.
They aren't coming. They don't have the funding for it. You are on the back burner straight away. But I tell you what, interest deductibility to landlords, that's a top order. That's right at the top. Making sure that business owners don't have to pay their workers a fair wage. Also, let's get that in before Christmas. That's a priority. Fuck you, from Brooke van Velden. Like, if you're a worker, you don't own your own business, you utter scum. Get away from me, you poor.
Yeah.
Eat a potato for Christmas. Fuck off. That's what she's saying in her lovely pink blouse.
Now, the last
any of the things that affect everyday New Zealanders, they'd love to drop in there.
The last thing she says in her lovely pink blouse is talking about schooling, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And remember, we've said this again and again. Those have to be an hour a day. That leaves probably between 45 minutes and an hour every day of the week. So maybe between 4 and 5 hours over the whole week for everything else. And they also talk about the anti-sexuality education that they're going to get rid of, culture wars. But I wanted to show you this part in particular because, again, like last week, Chloe is doing the job of the media, and the interview turns into Chloe interviewing Brooke.
But one thing that I heard throughout the campaign, and I still hear it now, is a frustration from New Zealanders that in our schools, we're not focusing enough on proper real life skills, things like reading, writing, literacy and numeracy. So I think that's possibly where it's
You mean those core curriculum subjects that every classroom teaches every day, Brooke? Those things, core curriculum. That's why they're called core curriculum subjects.
coming from, but I
No,
don't have the
because they've been
details and how that will
teaching
work
drag.
with gender ideology.
But how on earth will that benefit our young people or whānau or communities across the country if we are removing safe sex and sexuality education, which was thoroughly consulted on with communities? Like, it was a 10-year process to get to the place of this curriculum being put into our schools.
Well, what we've heard from many parents and many teachers behind the scenes is that the
Anecdotal,
curriculum refreshes have gone against good education for kids. Look, I think it is really important that children feel respected no matter what gender that they are. I think that is extremely important. But we have to have schools that are making sure that we are focusing on literacy and numeracy, as well as looking at keeping kids safe in the classroom and making sure that people are respectful no matter who they are in a classroom. So what we're saying is, yes, let's have a look into it. That's part of the New Zealand First National Coalition document. I don't have those details yet, but we've also got to make sure that schools are leaving kids with the very, very basic educations that they need to have a successful life.
I mean, do you have details then on reforming health and safety legislation as is put in the ACT National Party agreement?
Oh, Chloe, that's coming in future cabinets, and I can't wait to show it to you.
But you've committed to these things, which again,
Yeah,
it's
there you go. So there's a criticism of Labor slipping all these things. So they've basically said, these are our plans, blah, 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 blah. What are the prices? We haven't worked that out yet. We don't know. We'll tell you later on. It's the vibes, Chewy, as you say. We'll just play the last 15, 20 seconds of this because the comment from Chloe at the end is chef's kiss at the very end.
It's a pair of scissors. It's not a vision for the future of this country. It's
Sure.
nothing to unify people around.
And
it is a grab bag of unhinged hot takes.
We will absolutely have more time for that, I promise you. But I do feel like I've been slightly left out of this panel. Thank you both for coming this morning. Brooke van Velden and Chloe Swarbrick, I really appreciate your time. Best of luck for the first meeting today. Brooke, hope you get a good seat at the table.
Looking forward to seeing what we're dealing with.
Looking forward to seeing what we're dealing with.
Holy shit. Like, oh my, did Chloe just eat Brooke's lunch?
Yeah.
That's what it was. She dog walked her. Oh, but it's true. Like, it is unhinged hot takes. It's not based in anything. Everybody is horrified by this. Do you know, like, when they focus on things like reading and maths and all of this sort of stuff, this core reading, writing, arithmetic, it's so backwards, it's so old, and it has one function: to deliver workers, not functional people, workers. Like, why is a school not involved in building good, coherent, whole, confident people? That comes part and parcel with it. But no, we'll just break it down. Can they read? Can they do math to operate the machine that's going to deliver profit to shareholders? That's what we need.
Yeah, interesting. So they're looking forward to making more, what you're saying is more factory floor workers and more entry-level positions. That's what they're trying to churn out. No, that's a really interesting point, actually. Look, and as I said, any primary school teacher out there will tell you they are already doing reading and writing and numeracy and all these things. They're core curriculum subjects. But if they get set a task that you must do this for an hour a day, that means over a whole 5-day week, you're going to have 4 to 5 hours left for PE, for music, for art, for assemblies, all of those things. All of those things. Because I mean, each day in school is about 4.5 hours of teaching time, half an hour left to get, yourself sorted, to pack up at the end of the day and do the role at the start of the day. So say 4 hours, of which 3 are going to be taken up with reading, writing, and arithmetic, if they instill it in that way, which means a maximum of an hour a day for everything else. I had a mate who was teaching intermediate school for a very long time. He's not anymore, but he would do the production every year, and they'd work it out that the other teachers would cover his classes while he was out taking, rehearsals and stuff for for the production. And it was amazing every single year. None of that anymore, because how are you going to fit that into an hour each day, plus then all the other things on top? All the extracurricular activity stuff will disappear. And as you say, Chewy, you might get little workers, but you won't get little musicians or little artists. And also people who that kind of 1950s style of school doesn't work for, they will all fall to the bottom. And there will be a massive gap between those kids who, I love maths. You know what? I watch Countdown, that program Countdown, and I skip through just to the numbers games. That's how much I love maths. On my YouTube feed, they people set up just the Countdown games with numbers. They're all over YouTube. There's thousands of them. I love it. I would have been fine with the math side of it, not so much with the reading or writing because I'm dyslexic, but there are other people who that's not how their brain works, you know, and they're going to be like the difficult kid was in the 1970s. They're going to be like the kid who was really smart and really good with their hands, but couldn't sit still and couldn't do anything in the 1970s and 80s. And so they got left behind. Or they got put in the remedial class, and it's not that they're dumb, it's they had a learning difficulty. They were dyslexic, or they were dysgraphic, that's right, isn't it? Dysgraphic, or they had ADHD or that kind of stuff, and they couldn't just sit there and do it. And so you have to have a different style of teaching. All of those kids are history under this new style of teaching that these guys want to bring in.
Oh, I absolutely know that. Like as a kid that went through school with ADD and that sort of thing, every time I struck one of these old school teachers that was reading, writing, arithmetic, that sort of thing, it was absolute misery for me. Absolute misery. It drove people out of school. I was lucky that there was a fair balance in my school of teachers that were innovative and creative and had other ways of reaching me. But if this is the way that they want to go through, the kids like me are going to fall through cracks.
Yeah.
They are going to be the ones that leave school at 15 or 16.
Yep.
And they're not going to dig themselves out of the hole that they're in.
And what you'll see,
kids that won't make it to the end of school because they won't be able to find themselves. We'll go back to the times of people being bullied into suicide. Or people think that there's no way out because there's no validity in the way that they feel and hear, whether that through educational failings or just not seeing themselves in the work that they're doing at school.
Yeah. Not
seeing how they feel or feeling that they can tell someone about who they are. That's like, I'm not a parent. But I have been a kid that has been on the outside of that, and I know how lonely and hard that is. I know that there's kids that won't make it out of their teens. It's hard enough now. But when the government rallies around them and go, no, we don't have time for this. We don't have time to teach kids how to treat people that are different from themselves. We don't have time to teach kids that the way that they feel inside is valid and normal, and there's a place for them. Brooke doesn't give a shit about those kids. It's terrifying. It's so cold. Like
and listen, again, I'm not trying to be arrogant when I say this, but I think this is another you heard it here first moment. I really do. 15-year-olds today have poor results in their reading and writing and that sort of thing, their literacy levels, because they've been brought up through primary school under national standards, which were introduced in 2010, 2011 by a national government. So 15-year-olds today are on some level fucked in their education because of what national did to the education sector in 2010, 2011. What they're going to put in place now, if they do that, mark my word, in 10 to 15 years from now, you will have exactly the same fucked group of kids. A portion of them will be fucked group of kids, because you don't just get in and make these big changes and then get kicked out of office 3 years later so the other guys change it back. I'm not saying it's a generation to change it, but it's a time period to change it back to the way it was. So let's say National's in for 6 years, whatever. That's a whole generation of primary school kids, right, are now going to go through this, And then 5 years after that, they'll be at secondary school, getting towards the end. Under a Labour government, National will be bitching and moaning and complaining about 15, 16, 17-year-olds and how they're not achieving in schools. And it will be based on this bullshit that they're going to put into primary schools now. Mark my word and remember this moment. Like people should have remembered national standards when National started going off about the outcomes of 15-year-olds today. 15-year-olds in 10 to 15 years from now will be impacted negatively based on what National's doing today, and we cannot forget it.